These feasts, the Sundays of Advent, the Sundays of Lent, special solemnities, there's always the readings, but then there's the event. And what part of the event we're celebrating or focusing on. And so a preacher can be called to speak directly to readings and break them open for the assembly. Or in this case, I feel called to break open not just the readings, but the event. You do realize that this is the second shortest possible Advent we can have. One more day and Christmas. And so we've got to work in to the next 36 hours, a whole week's worth of Advent preparing. If you weren't under enough stress already. At the beginning of this period, it dawned on me about this shortness, and last year was the possible, or the most possible short Advent you could have with only 21 days in it. So this year we got an extra whole day. And it dawned on me that I personally have a mixed history of Advent preparing. I don't know about you all, but Advent does seem to get lost in the shuffle of not just the holidays, but just life's events that are going on at the end of the year, from Thanksgiving to Christmas and New Year's, and all of that, from family to tax donations and all those things that your accountant wants you to consider before the end of the year. And so I ran across an article that in the days before Thanksgiving that I thought would be good for our reflection on Advent. And I suggested it to the contemplative core team, and they thought it was a good idea. And it was an article written by Sister Joan Chittister, a Benedictine out of the monastery in Erie, Pennsylvania. And actually, we've had it posted on the website, the parish website, since the first Sunday of Advent. And each week in Advent, the contemplative corner that's in the bulletin has looked at a segment of Sister Joan's reflection on Advent and broke open some of the thoughts that crossed our mind, and thank gosh for technology. But one of the things of the article that really struck me was a statement she made in it. Because, you know, we immediately go to the idea of the commercialism of Christmas and all of the, jingle bells, deck the halls and get your shopping done. And she says, the consumerism is really with us all year round, so it's not like it's that different. And she says, the problem is the lack of contemplative consideration. And let me translate that. The lack of some peace and quiet and silence to meditate on what's happening. This commercialism at this time of the year too often drowns out the sounds of Advent and drains not only the feast, but even perhaps the rest of the year of its meaning. I remembered when that struck me that it drowns out the meaning and not only of the feast, but possibly the rest of the year of its meaning. And so I decided this Advent, I was going to try and immerse myself as deeply as I could every day with the sounds of Advent. And Mary Ann can attest. She's heard nothing but Advent songs all these past 3 weeks. And as an aid to enable me to try and get to the heart. And so as I looked at the readings for this week, this fourth Sunday of Advent, it dawned on me there was this underlying current in each of them. And to sum it up in one word, it's change. To expand on that a little bit, change is coming. Well, of course, change is coming. I'm going to get presents. Well, yes, you are. But unlike what you've been planning for, we've been to prepare. We're supposed to straighten the roads. We're supposed to lower the mountains and fill up the valleys, preparing for the coming of the Lord. Not for us, but for the Lord. Prepare for the Lord's coming. And that coming, that change in our lives, actually, we celebrate it in Advent and Christmas, but it's something that comes every day. It comes every year. It's constantly coming. God is always coming into our lives. And so what is the face of this preparing? This preparing for change. And of course, we look to models, examples. Isn't that what a lot of the scripture is for? To give us models and examples. And what better model and example than Mary, than Joseph? But there's a unique twist to the change that they had to deal with. It's unexpected change. We're not too good at change generally as human beings. But boy, do we really stumble and struggle with unexpected change. And that's exactly what happened to them. Do you think that's what Mary and Joseph had planned on when their lives would change, when they were going to get married? Everything changed. Everything. How did they deal with it? And in a nutshell, with faith and trust and hope. But we also can look to Jesus for that model or example of dealing with change. And instead of waiting until he was born, let's look at that process leading up to his birth. And Paul writes about that in the Philippians letter that he says, and I want to make sure I get this right. Your attitude must be Christ's. Though he was in the form of God, he did not deem equality with God something to be grasped at. Change your attitude, is what Paul is saying, to Christ's attitude. And what is Christ's attitude? Rather, he emptied himself and took the form of a slave, being born in the likeness Now, theologically, you've got to come up with a fancy word for that. And the Greek word that the early fathers came up with is kenosis. It means to empty. And it has become, over the centuries, basically defined as self-emptying love. The self-emptying love of God to let go of his divinity, to embrace humanity. Not that he stopped being divine, but he didn't hold, grasp. The exact words Paul uses. He did not deem equality with God something to be grasped at. So our attitude towards change, because when God self-emptied out of love, the incarnation, the enfleshment of the divine occurs. The divine is poured in to creation. Oh, that's really the definition of Trinitarian love. This welcoming the change. This letting go, kenosis, divine kenosis of self-emptying love. Welcoming that change. And if you want to be my disciple, what does Jesus tell us? Come follow me, pick up your cross. What's the cross? The cross of accepting change, embracing it daily, emptying yourself, letting go, don't grasp on to things. Oh, what happens if we can do that? Then Christ incarnates in us. Oh my. Oh my. Christ becomes incarnate in us if we can welcome unexpected change, if we can let go, self-empty. When you come forward to receive Eucharist, don't you put your hands together? And to me, when I observe this from this side of the altar, I see people cupping their hands. It's like they're forming a little nest. A hollow space, emptied out to make room for the incarnate to manifest itself. For us to receive, we need to make space. That's the straightening of the road. That's the lowering of the mountain. That's the filling up the valley to make ready for the coming. Whenever that happens. There's a ritual that the minister does, and if the deacon is present, the deacon does it, and if not, the priest does it. They mix the water and the wine in the chalice. And these words are the words that the minister is to say when that's being done. It's supposed to be said aloud, but in a very low tone, so it basically nobody to hear it. By the mystery of this water and wine, may we come to share in the divinity of Christ, who humbled himself to share in our humanity. If we can open our hearts and our minds to divine kenosis, self-emptying, and mix the water and wine of our lives and divine life. The divine Christ becomes incarnate in us. It's just having an open mind and an open heart, a welcoming mind, a welcoming heart. A mind and a heart that's willing to let go, not grasp at. It seems like in this last week, more and more I've been hearing, are you ready for Christmas? Are you ready for Christmas? I even made mention of that to one of the ministers in the back before church start. Did you notice how Father even said it, the first words out of his mouth this morning? Well, are you ready? It just kind of bubbles up in us, and of course, the beauty was the person said no, and then I responded, yeah, are we really ever ready? And then she didn't realize, I don't know, if she was really, she didn't understand, I don't think, the fullness of the theological pronouncement she made when she said back to me, he came in chaos. The peace of the world, the Prince of Peace, came in chaos. In all the unexpected changes of our life. I guarantee you something's going to happen in your family gathering on Christmas that you didn't plan for, that you didn't expect. It happened last year. You probably can even name it. I hear a few chuckles out there. Yeah. How did you receive it? What was your attitude? Did you take on the attitude of Christ, welcoming, letting go, not grasping at your idea of the perfect Christmas celebration or your idea of the perfect Christmas dinner or the perfect Christmas present or whatever it may be. Go with the flow of the divine in your life. As you come forward to receive the bread of life, what will your attitude be? Open your hearts and minds. Are you ready for Christmas? Are you ready to become what you eat?